Baseball is a game of failure.
1-2 swing and a miss in a season.
Hall of Famers. Batting average 300. 3 out of 10. So they fail 7 out of 10 times. Are in the Hall of Fame at baseball. It's a sport of failure.
Meet Brian Fulkerson. We're currently an hour outside of Washington, D.C., at the field where Brian coaches his team.
There's going to be errors out there, okay? It's fine. You pick them up, you support them, and we move on, right? We move on to the next play.
Brian and I have been friends for over 11 years, and over the years, I've watched Brian become a bit obsessed about coaching Little League in the best possible way. And when he's not coaching Little League, he's a managing director of sales at Arbinger.
I work with adults all the time, and after they're given access to Arbinger's work and they experience it, I can't tell you how many times they have told me, I wish I would have had this earlier in my career. I wish I would have had this as a young father. I wish I would have had this as a young mother. I wouldn't have screwed up this, and this had I had this information. And I think it planted something in me of like, well, how early can we go?
Yeah. How early can we go? What does it look like to coach leadership and mindset outside of an office setting?
Can we start planting the seed now in 5-year-olds that leadership skills are what's gonna make you an effective human being moving forward? And I was like, wait, I'm not just a baseball coach. I am actually going to start teaching Arbinger principles at baseball. I'll run the experiment. I got the time and the resource and the knowledge and the energy and the passion and the motivation to do it.
Right.
I'll be the guy. Let me see what happens.
Brian's experiment raises a compelling question. Does how we influence change across settings, or are the principles the same, whether you're leading in the dugout or in the boardroom? Welcome to Leading Outward, the Arbinger Institute's podcast where we explore the tools and ideas we've used for over 45 years to help people solve their toughest leadership and organizational challenges by leading with an outward mindset, seeing people as people. I'm Victoria Trammell. I was asking you about what you were doing with your baseball team, because I'd heard that you had started to use some Arbinger principles with Little League, but like, what does that look like?
I'd probably have to take you back to where it started. I was that dad in the outfield, pacing back and forth, watching my son be coached by another individual, another dad who has the best of intentions, coaching my son. And I'm pacing, and Maureen, my wife, comes up to me and she says, "What's going on?" I'm like, I see this, I see this. And she goes, "If you really want change, I know they're looking for coaches." And I said, okay. So that fall I signed up and I started with my youngest son's team. This one practice happens. And this is where, for me, it started changing. Practice started at 5. Typically, kids were starting to get there around 4:50, and parents are starting to drop it off and that sort of thing. But it's 5 o'clock, nobody's there, just me and my son. And then at 5:01, I'm seeing parents like drag their kids out of the car, kids crying, coming up from the parking lot to the field. And I'm like, what is going on? All I saw was a wave of problems coming to Brian that now is going to be my problem to solve.
In the form of cranky 5-year-olds.
Cranky 5-year-olds.
Oh, okay.
So this practice was a nightmare. And in my head, I start thinking, I knew I should never have done this. I got 1,000 other things I could be doing right now. But no, now I'm stuck here on this field with all these kids. So I get so frustrated. I'm like, all right, guys, bring it in. Let's break it down. We're going home. Like 45 minutes into it. So we break it down, and I'm walking off the field, and a mom is walking onto the field to go pick up her daughter. And she goes, "Oh, that was a rough practice, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah. Did you see what I had to deal with out there?" And she stopped. She's like, "I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about those kids." And the way she said it and the tone, I was just like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Coach, today was our first day of kindergarten, right?" And I was just like, "Wait, what?" And she was like, "Yeah, they're exhausted. They probably got up at 6 o'clock this morning, full day, come home, some of them probably had dinner, some didn't, and now they're here." And Vic, had I known that, we wouldn't have touched a baseball. We wouldn't touch a bat. We would have played duck, duck, goose and ran around playing sharks and minnows, like something fun for these kids, right?
Yeah.
When I was reflecting on that, like it hit me so hard because I was so much in my own way. Here's my practice plan. This is what I'm going to teach them. This is what they're going to learn. They're going to learn how to do this, 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 this. And not one time did I ever stop and actually see them as little 5-year-old people that have challenges, that just got done with their very first day of school ever.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it at all because it was all about me and my plan and making sure I got what I wanted through to them.
So mom reveals that it was first day. You have kind of a, oh man moment. What next?
So it was at this point that it was like, I started thinking about the influence pyramid.
Okay, so the influence pyramid is one of the tools we use here at Arbinger to help individuals and teams create meaningful change and influence change in others. But it turns out it can be just as effective with 5-year-olds as it is with executives. So picture a pyramid, and at the very bottom of the pyramid is mindset, seeing people as people. That is the foundation to every other level of the pyramid. As we move the next level up is building relationships with the person we want to influence. Now, once we have the right mindset towards the person and have built a relationship with them, next level up is to listen and learn. What's going on in their world? What might be getting in the way for them to be able to make this change? After that, we reach teach and communicate. This is where we might share our expertise and experience in order to be most helpful to this person. And then finally, at the very, very top is correcting. Now, honestly, when we picture a coach, we probably picture them operating at the teaching, communicating, and correcting levels, almost exclusively, shoulders back, weight in the balls of your feet, chin out of your chest, elbow up, whatever it is. But that's not what Brian does with his 5-year-olds.
Okay, if I want to have optimal influence over these kids and for them to buy into baseball, I have got to start working at the bottom of the pyramid. Instead of hanging out the top, correct. Nope.
Right.
Little Johnny, you went down the third base. We go this way. You got to run first base. It was all about building relationships. And then all of a sudden it became about building a team and building a community and building, how do we start to see these little kids as something different than little chess pieces for me as the coach?
So give me an example. What did that look like to build relationships with 5-year-olds?
Well, now I'm giving high fives. And now I'm walking around, I'm like, hey, so-and-so, like, how was school today? Getting down on a knee, making sure I'm eye to eye with them, right? Just checking in with them. What's going on? Oh, my leg hurts. What? Why is your leg hurt? Like, they have 1,000 different things you can talk about. But now I'm getting curious. And so now I'm learning who are the tired ones, who are the hungry ones, who are this. And now you can start doing practice just a little bit different, or say something that actually encourages them instead of, for me, the easiest thing to do is lose patience and get frustrated. I get frustrated, like, oh my gosh, well, because he's starving and he's 5.
You say this like this is the most obvious thing in the world, but I mean, I think that most people in your position would probably have reacted similarly. Like, I have an almost 5-year-old, and the number of times where I get super impatient with him outweigh the number of times that I wait and get curious with him. So, I mean, like, you're making me think about this right now in terms of how often do I just get so frustrated with his non-compliance rather than getting curious as to the root of why he's non-compliant.
Yeah. Can I tell a story?
Of course.
Okay. Last spring, I'm drafting a bunch of managers in our division get together in a rundown train station. And we have a list of kids. And the list of kids has literally every kid that we can select. You're just going back and forth, right? And you're selecting your team. And it's based on assessment data. It has pitching strength, hitting strength, fielding strength, that sort of things. Doesn't have anything else. It's just literally baseball.
The raw stats, basically.
The raw stats. So we're looking at this list, but I see this kid on there that I have never heard of before. I didn't know who he was. But I'm looking, I'm like, he's got pretty good stats. It's my turn. I stopped the draft and I said, hey, does anybody know this player? And every single coach was like, yep, we know him. I said, well, what's up? And they're like, he has behavioral issues, both in school, out of school. And I was like, huh. I was like, but it says here that this kid can play.
Yeah.
They said, yeah, he'll be a good player for you, but he is a big time distraction. Well, I can't be the person that I want to be and, teach kids and then be like, well, if anybody has a hard problem for me, I'm not going to do it. So I said, let's do it. I'll select this kid. Fast forward to the first practice. He got into a fight with another kid, tearing clothes, kicking, both kids crying. And I see this and I sprint over there, separate them, and we go and we sit down. And for the rest of practice, just try to calm him down. And what I learned in just that couple minutes with him, this is a kid that has been picked on his entire life. When his back is up against the wall, there's only one thing that he knows to do, and that is fight. Now, how do I handle this? First thing I had to do is, hey, if this happens again, you're done. I have to make this a safe place for everyone else on the team.
Right.
There was a Monday practice. He didn't show up for it. That's interesting. But he was there Wednesday or, Saturday or whatever. Next Monday, he wasn't there, but he showed up Wednesday. And so I finally reached out to the parents and I said, hey, I noticed that he isn't showing up on Mondays. Is there something going on? Well, yeah, he's got 2 older brothers. We go going in different directions. We just can't get him there. And I said, well, if you're okay with that, I'll pick him up. And so on Mondays, I picked him up and threw my kid in the back and I let him sit shotgun and we got curious. And we just got to know him. And I'm sitting there thinking, bottom of the pyramid, how do I build a relationship with him? Hey, so you got brothers? Yeah. Tell me about them. He'd tell me about them. Like, to you and me who are parents, heartbreaking things coming out of his mouth. Hey, do you got friends? Yeah. Every time I go and try to play with them, though, they all run the other direction. I mean, heartbreaking things.
Yeah.
But slowly and surely, we got to know him more and more and more. The relationship was starting to get built. And what we were seeing on the field was starting to get better and better and better. Well, in baseball, one of the things, if you're doing warm-ups, you're starting to develop leadership skills. So I select leaders on the team to lead warm-ups. And I started positioning him in the car of like, hey, if you took on that role, what would that look like? Well, this is what I do. Great. I'll try to give you a chance. So we try to start thinking about what that looked like for him. It was a practice and I said, hey guys, this player is going to lead. And like, wait, what? But he did it and he nailed it. And from that point forward, he became one of the leaders on the team. Behavioral issues started going down and more supporting skills started showing up. Fast forward to the championship game, this kid hits a home run. And it was awesome.
That's awesome.
And it is awesome. It is awesome. And the team celebrating with him and everything like that was a very, very cool moment. When we're talking about seeing kids, it would have been the easiest thing in the world for me to be like, whew, he's not coming to practice. That makes my life a ton easier. But just getting to know him and what makes him tick and what are his challenges? What are his fears? What's going on with that? And how I can set him up for success? I don't know. To me, that is what seeing some of these kids looks like.
As much as Brian's practice starting at the bottom of the influence pyramid, checking his mindset, building relationships, listening, it's still hard to remember and live out every day. And that's true for all of us. We tend to show up as better versions of ourselves at work or in public than we do at home. It's somehow easier to be patient with a coworker, get curious with a student or someone else's child than it is with our own.
A couple of weeks ago, Kevin, my 9-year-old, was going to camp, and it was a camp that went from Monday through Thursday. And on Wednesday night, he declared war on camp. He looked at me and he said, Dad, I am not going to camp tomorrow. And we have this thing in our house where we say, hey, that's cool, but let's let the Kevin of tomorrow make that decision when you wake up in the morning. So he says, okay, but I'm telling you, I'm not going to camp tomorrow. I said, okay. So he goes off to bed. I go off to bed. And I wake him up in the morning. I said, hey, it's time to get up for camp. And he looked at me and he said, I told you last night, I am not going to camp today. Now you're in a power struggle with your 9-year-old. And as a dad, I sit there and using Arbinger's influence pyramid, start right at the top, at the correct. No,
Yeah.
you are going to camp and you're going to get ready in the next 10 minutes. You're going to be downstairs. My wife, Maureen, walks into the room and she gives me that look that says, you are not helping this situation. You know, let me in. So she starts in, and the first thing she says was just brilliant. Hey, Kevin, why don't we get to camp early and you show me all the stuff that you've been working on this week? And let me learn what you've been working on. Like, it was a complete new way, a new perspective of addressing this, and smile from ear to ear. And he said, yeah, I'll do that. And I was like, okay. That night, I asked Maureen, I said, hey, how did drop off at camp go? And she says, it was awesome. You know, we spent the first 30 minutes. He walked me around. He showed me everything that they were working on. And at 9 o'clock, all the kids started going into the tent and he ran right in. I said, no issues at all. And she said, no, it was great. And so I sit back and I have to reflect on this situation. Again, thinking about the influence pyramid. And I think, all right, well, Maureen was able to slide down to that listen and learn. And while she was listening and learning from him, they're building a relationship. And it just goes so much to, it's not about the correction. It's about the connection. How are you able to connect with folks to help that change whatever's happening, that influence? How are you able to influence someone by connecting with them versus correcting them?
What I love about both of these stories is that the change happened when Brian and Maureen weren't focused on the change. It happened when they focused on the person and what the person needed. You know, so often when we want change, we also want to be the catalyst. We want to be the one who makes it happen. But if what we truly want is change itself, then we become more open to the other factors that influence it. Our energy shifts from trying to drive the change to creating an environment, a community where change is most likely to happen.
What I learned, you know, again, just being a parent at times, is that I'll show up to games and we're all sitting next to each other. I have no idea who these people are. I don't know what kid goes to what parent. I don't know names. I don't know anything when you're a parent. And I just wanted to break that down. How do we make a community? Well, we make a community by getting to know each other. So one of my most favorite things to do to get parents involved, kids involved, and this is the very, very first meeting.
So we're talking February.
We're bundled up and we're sitting on bleachers and it's going to be cold, and give me 30, 45 minutes of your time. But I want to introduce myself, who I am, what I'm about. And we talk about the rules and we talk about that division. We say, hey, here's some of the expectations. So the kids typically are sitting by themselves and the parents are sitting by themselves. I'm like, all right, boys, sit next to your parents. And then my most favorite thing is I said, hey, look, we're going to go. I have a list, and I want to make sure, first of all, parents, I have your names right. And for the boys, you know, if there's any nicknames or anything like that. And then I want to know from the parents, where did you grow up? How long have you been here in our town? And then my most favorite question, because it's so important that the parents speak this and so that their kids can hear it. What impresses you most about your son? And it is awesome. We see tears. We see boys who have never heard their parents speak about what impresses them.
I'm like getting choked up thinking about this. I would be a blubbering mess.
Yeah, it is awesome. And I'm taking notes. And I'm taking notes the whole time. I love when the parents are talking, looking at the boy's face. Because I'm like, they have never heard this coming out of their parents' mouth.
So cool. Like, I'm still like, I'm sitting in my own brain about, like, if I was sitting in those stands, what I would say about my boys. I'm like, beside crying.
It is an unbelievable experience. And boom, bonding happens immediately. We're off to the races.
This isn't the first thing Brian does to help foster the right mindset and build relationships with his team. Here's a portion of the email he sends to families at the beginning of the season.
More than anything, I like to utilize the power of baseball to teach life lessons that build stronger individuals and communities. When I'm not shuttling my boys to their sports practices and games, I work at the Arbinger Institute. Our mission is to help organizations and leaders create high-performing cultures. I apply the same frameworks to baseball teams. I love watching the boys develop their leadership skills over the season. My core coaching philosophy comes down to one simple thing: meaningful reps. I like the athletes to work in small groups to get reps, and more reps. Kids learn more from doing. I'm not going to overcoach them and steal their struggle. Baseball is a game of failure, and we will put them in complex situations where they are expected to fail forward. Sound like life, huh? They need to experience it themselves in order to accelerate their own development.
I love that phrase, steal their struggle. If Brian as a coach or any of us as leaders or people who want to have influence on others always take away the struggle, we're robbing them of the opportunity to learn. So this is another place where Brian builds influence by creating the space where the boys have the freedom to learn and discover together.
I am not the coach, I am a coach. To the degree coaches can get out of it and stop talking and put them in situations where they can learn how to do this, I have found that to be very, very successful. So when I'm thinking about practice plans, it's how do I put them in groups and have them socializing, have them talk about it. When they are messing around, they're not actually messing around to mess around, they're messing around to bond. So how do I put them in situations where they can bond and get better at baseball?
Now, it might sound like there isn't actually a lot of baseball going on, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It's not that Brian spends most of his time doing things that will build culture but not build their baseball skills. He changes how they practice baseball skills in a way that builds culture. And this starts with the very first practice.
First thing I do is I have a whiteboard. I carry a portable whiteboard with me everywhere with hooks for the fence and multiple colors markers, dry erase markers. I come out, hook it on, and I ask a simple question, and I'm like, hey, what does a good teammate look like? And I draw a line, and we sit there and we explore what a good teammate looks like. It doesn't take them long. All it takes is a couple questions, and then boom, they're shouting it out. And this kid says something that spawns a thought of another, and so he starts yelling. All I'm doing is asking questions, and it's amazing the responses that I would probably tell them,
Right.
but they already know, but now they're buying into it, right? All I do is facilitate. And then I say, okay, that was fun. What does a bad teammate look like? They understand good behavior, bad behavior. I can't dive into mindset as much as I'd like. We kind of do it differently, right? And they just yell it out. I'm like, yell it out,
Right.
They're so disciplined. They're
raising their hand.
I'm like, I don't care. Don't raise your hand. Start shouting. Like, all right, did I catch everything?
Yeah.
And then there's always those one or two, and this is what helps set the culture, that aren't going to say anything.
Okay.
Hey, what do you think? Is there anything on here that we haven't talked about? Well, what about this? I'm like, perfect, right up there. You haven't said anything. And, we're trying to get that belonging. We're trying to get the inclusion. And that's what kind of sets the tone for some of this.
Everybody gets some buy-in.
Everybody has that buy-in.
Brian does this same check-in, buy-in process throughout the season as well.
Hey, tough game last night. Let's talk about it. I have my whiteboard. What did we learn from last night, boys? And they start yelling out stuff. Great. So when we think about practice today, how can we be intentional about helping with this? And I erase, and they start talking. So when I see someone not doing that, I can go over to them and say, hey, player, remember what we talked about? Yeah, great. Is that helping your teammates get better right now? Is that behavior that you're acting out on right now, is that helping everyone get better? No. Okay. What does it look like to help them get better? This is what it looks like. Great, let's go. Let's go do it.
This works so well because it replaces the traditional form of correcting, of stop doing that, do this instead, with a reminder of what they already suggested and agreed to, and helps them see that they aren't living up to that. Brian's teams definitely get better at baseball, but for him, the more far reaching impact is helping them learn life and leadership skills.
The chances that the kids that are in our league, generally speaking, make a high school team, pretty slim. Become a professional and get paid to play this, not even in major leagues, but single A.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what the stats are. They're low.
Right.
So it's like, okay, why can't we anchor leadership skills and teach them through the anchoring of baseball? They're going to go off and do something else with their life. Why don't we teach them the skills that they need, those leadership skills, how to be brave, how to be courageous, how to fail. The more you play baseball, the more successful you be at life, because baseball is a game of failure. Meaning, Hall of Famers, batting average 300, 3 out of 10. So they fail 7 out of 10 times, are in the Hall of Fame at baseball. Like, it's a sport of failure. Tons of walks if you're pitching. You make errors all the time. But how do you pick yourself up and keep going? It's kind of the skills in life. When we're at work, it's not always going to go right. How do we fail forward? How do we try something new and be like, okay, that didn't work. Let's keep going, instead of being devastated. We can learn a lot of that on the baseball field.
Now, Brian was working late on a project one night with a colleague and friend, Jacob Farrell.
And the topic of coaching Little League Baseball came up. And he and I were just kind of going back and forth on some of my philosophies. And it's more than just the wins and the losses, but it's the leadership.
I said something along the lines of, look, man, you're going to mean a lot to these kids. Like, I had a coach, man, he meant a lot to me.
That's Jacob. And make sure you remember that his last name is Farrell, because that's important to this story.
I started playing baseball probably when I was 6, and I played Little League for probably about 10 years. Big time athlete, but I never went to travel teams. My parents were like, it's just a little too much. And because of that, I was definitely better than average in Little League, but I couldn't keep with the comp guys. But that was fun because I usually would get selected for the teams. I was one of the people that people would freeze. So I went to tryouts, and Dan Jessup came up in tryouts. He was like, I'm freezing you, Farrell. And basically that means you're on my team. So I didn't know him, but what I ended up finding out is that he really didn't know a thing about baseball. Like, he was the head coach. He had 2 assistant coaches that kind of knew baseball, but he didn't know baseball. And when I say that, he knew everything about the game, but he didn't know how to coach. He wasn't the guy that was up there throwing balls. He would sit over on the sidelines. He'd sit on his knees, and he would just laugh and smile and yell things. Like, that's what he was. He was just there, I think, because he enjoyed it, and his son was on the team too. I remembered I was up on the mound, I'm pitching, and I just remember he would just say, I love you, Farrell. And kind of his raspy, just his raspy voice.
So interesting now, hearing from the one who was coached, what Jacob remembers, what sticks with us 20 years later. Now, obviously, coaching isn't just about winning games, although nobody's looking to lose. However, for the coaches who really see people on their teams, it does seem to come with an added benefit.
We were incredible. We went undefeated, and we won the championship. I don't even know if we ever had a close game. I think one of the main reasons why the team ended up being incredible that year specifically is because we had a coach that cared about each person, and that just raised performance.
I remember him just saying, he wasn't much of an X's and O's type of guy, but he just loved us. Anytime I would find myself in a difficult spot on the mound, he would just yell out, I love you, Farrell, from the dugout.
Brian's like, you know what? You should email him and tell him that.
And he's like, no, he would never remember me. And I said, Jacob, I'm gonna have to push back. He sounds like the guy that would remember.
And so I did right then. And I pulled him up and I was like, what should I say? I think I screen shared and I just started typing an email. So here was the email. The subject was in quotes, I love you, Farrell. I'm hoping this is Dan O. Jessup, my baseball coach for 2 years in Little League. If it is, I doubt you even remember me, but I was chatting with a friend, reminiscing about what makes a good coach, and I told him that not only did I have a favorite coach when I played baseball, but in all my years of Little League, I had only one coach that I even remembered, Dan Jessup. I hope you're doing well if this is you. I appreciate the way you made sure everyone on your team was respected, had an opportunity to develop, and a couple laughs along the way. All the best, Jacob Farrell. And I hit send. 32 minutes later. Jacob, how could I forget the best Little League closer on the planet? You were the shiz. And I know exactly how he's typing that. Thank you for this email. It made me smile, then cry a little. Those were good times. I got way more from you guys than you me. I can tell you turned out to be a dang nice guy. I bet you are a hell of a golfer too. Thanks, Dano. I think if you got an email like that from one of your students, even if you didn't remember who they were, you probably would say, of course I remember you, right? So I think the first few words there, how could I forget? And I was like, well, there's a lot of ways you could forget, but it is evident in what he said. He actually remembered who I was. When he says that made me smile, then cry a little, it wasn't a guy that you'd really expect to cry just by looking at him, But at the same time, he was just a big teddy bear. Like he just loved everyone. He had a great time. And so when I got the email, it was cool. He's just a good guy.
We asked Jacob if he'd be interested in reaching out to Coach Jessup to record a conversation between the two of them for this podcast. Jacob was excited to reconnect with him and went to reach out.
So I just went and I looked him up, and this is what I saw. Kaysville City posted his obituary the day before. I want to express our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Dan Jessup following his recent passing. Served the Kaysville community for 32 years. He looks the exact same as when he was my coach. Maybe a little less gray hair, but I even remember him with gray hair. Look, I was gutted. I would have loved to reconnect with him.
It's moments like these that remind us how important it is we follow through on the senses we have of what to do for other people, because we might not always have the chance to do that. Coach Jessup was so influential in Jacob's life that he was brought up in conversation with a friend 20 years later. For Jacob to send that email and to thank him for his influence was important to Jacob and to Dan.
If I hadn't been chatting about that with Brian less than a year earlier, I never would have got that. As like somber as it sounds, I don't know what the end of his life was like. I have no idea. It makes me feel glad that at least at some point in his final year of life, he had a moment to realize and reflect that, man, he made a difference in a kid's life 20 years ago. And hopefully that gave him at least some level of satisfaction and utility and happiness in the last 11 months of his life. And look, that's an email response that means a lot. I mean, how many people are saying that about someone 20 years later?
From reading Dan's obituary, it's pretty clear that Jacob's experience with Dan was a lot like everyone else's experience with him. It says here, Dan was known for his lighthearted spirit and was especially famous for embarrassing his kids by dressing like a clown at their Little League football game. His knack for connection led to others feeling seen. And that's what having influence means, that our connection with others makes them feel seen. And when we feel like somebody really cares, that we're part of something, like Jacob felt with Dano.
And I'll never forget, I mean, that's a cool email response. You were the shiz.
Then we want to be influenced by that person. So we willingly allow ourselves to be, which makes leading in all capacities so much more enjoyable and effective for everyone.
It's going to take all 12 of us to compete in this tournament. And I will take you 12 over anyone. You guys are all ridiculous athletes. We're putting the bat in your hands so you guys can be aggressive and do what you did. So many barrels. I'm proud of every single one of you. You're in there, and you're in there swinging. Let's be aggressive in that box, okay? Loved everything I saw today. It was awesome. Outfield, hey, you're backing up plays. It's perfect. We're going to make some errors. It's fine. You pick them up, you support them, and we move on, right? We move on to the next play. I loved it. I loved everything I saw out there today. Awesome job.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Bring it in.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Upper!
Leading Outward is produced by the Arbinger Institute, the premier provider of leadership development and organizational transformation. If you'd like greater help driving results in your teams and organization, the Arbinger Institute has been helping clients do just that for over 40 years. To talk to a team member about your specific challenges and how we can help, book a meeting at arbinger.com.